Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second lecture of Paraspar's Art and Science series. This series explores the work that brings together the two traditionally disparate domains of knowledge, art and science, in exciting new ways and facilitates newer possibilities. Today, we are very happy to have an alumnus of IISc, Ravi Jambhekar, to present his work and interact with us. The title of his talk today is Ecological Research and Natural History Illustrations. Before we begin, let me give you a brief introduction of the speaker. Ravi completed his doctorate degree from Center for Ecological Sciences, IISc. He is currently working as a scientist at the Indian Institute of Human Settlements. He worked on butterfly communities in the Western Ghats for his PhD. His current work focuses on urban ecology, studying birds and butterfly population in Bangalore and other mega cities across India. He has been doing scientific illustration since 2015, and it is one of his passions. He has done illustrations for children's books, NGOs, popular science articles, and commercial brands. Ravi, we welcome you and we request you to please present your talk.
Thank you, Pitasta, for the introduction, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk on your platform. Let me just share my screen and upload the presentation. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Paraspar, as I already said, for giving me this opportunity. Today, I will talk about my research and my journey as a researcher, as a natural history illustrator, and how I'm using art and science to help in conservation causes and also in nature and science education. So this talk I have divided into two parts. The first part I will talk about my PhD research and my current research. Not very technical things, but just to give like some flavors of the research that I did during my PhD. And the second part will involve the natural history illustration part and how I'm using illustrations to bridge the gap between art and science. So for my PhD research, I studied the effects of landscape features such as habitat area, the type of the habitat, and the fragmentation in the habitat patches using species traits on butterfly communities in the Western Ghats. By using species traits and behavioral studies, one can study the effects of landscape features on multiple species. If you are focusing on one species, that might not give us an idea that how the community of species will respond to fragmentation or habitat degradation. So that's why I chose this as my topic. And as I said, my PhD was in the Western Ghats, and it was mostly a field-based project, which involved like me in spending time on field for like 6 to 8 months in a year. And most of these places were in the remote parts of the Western Ghats in the Goa, Maharashtra, and Karnataka region. As all of you must be knowing that the Western Ghats are a hotspot for biodiversity. It supports a lot of endemic birds, butterflies, amphibians, and a lot of plants. But for my PhD, I focused on the butterflies, the butterfly community in the Western Ghats. So I'll play a short video from my field. So this is how the landscape looked like. So I did my field work in the grassland forest complexes in the Western Ghats. They look like islands of grasslands which are like bordered by these thick, moist, deciduous forests. And there are lots of insects, butterflies, large mammals such as tigers, gores that are found in this landscape. So to give you a better idea, If you look at these light green patches in between the clumps of trees, those are the grassland patches, and the vast matrix is the forest, which was a mixture of evergreen and moist deciduous forest. The idea of my research question for my PhD was twofold. One was to study the butterfly communities, but the other thing was also to study the importance of different kinds of habitats in the landscape. It was to find out how these different butterflies are distributed in the forests and grassland patches in the Western Ghats. So usually it is thought to be that the forests are the habitat for butterflies and animals, and many of the other habitats such as grasslands and scrub forests, riparian zones are ignored or are not protected under the forest designated areas. So that's why I wanted to study for my PhD that how do these butterflies or other animals use these different habitats in the landscape. Are they found more only in the forests, or they are found in both the habitats? So just to give you an idea of how a day in the field would look like, we would begin by following a butterfly in these grassland and forest complexes in the Western Ghats and record their behavior. For example, like if you see this butterfly, it is feeding on the nectar from the flowers. So we would record this behavior and we would collect data every 30 seconds on how it's feeding, where it's feeding, how long or far it's flying off from where we started the follow. And I would also record the diversity and abundance of butterflies found in different types of forests to later connect it to the species traits and the effects of landscape features, which such as habitat type and habitat area, and also the surrounding matrix. Matrix is nothing but the non-habitat on butterfly communities. One very exciting part of so we would capture these butterflies and put a unique ID. If you focus on the central part of the image, there is one individual which has been marked. So we would mark these butterflies. This technique is called as mark recapture. And it's a very tricky process because these butterflies are really tiny, about like 1 or 2 millimeters, maximum to about 3-4 millimeters in size. And we don't want to damage the wings or damage the individual while handling. So we would mark them with permanent markers so that each butterfly has a unique ID, and we would quickly release them back in the habitat. And after a few days, we would go to the same habitat and try to randomly catch the individuals that we find and see if we find any of the marked individuals. We would also take the GPS locations of each of these butterflies. So if we find them in any part of the study area, we would know how much these butterflies have moved. So studying this movement behavior of butterflies was really important to see how butterflies move between the grassland and forest patches, and also if there is any difference in butterfly behavior in different habitat patches and in different seasons. So this is one of my interns, Shalini, who was helping me catch these butterflies in butterfly nets. And on the left, we had made kind of a 1 by 1 square meter graph paper sort of a thing to take photos of these butterflies so that we know the size and length and how many rings they have, the color of the rings. So the idea was to use this data later on to see if the color and size of butterflies is also correlated to the habitat in which these butterflies were found. So moving forward to the results, we found a total of 6,330 individuals belonging to 118 species. In Western Ghats, there are about 220 different species of butterflies. Many of them are endemic, that is, they are found only in the Western Ghats and nowhere else in the world. And we almost got to see more than 50% of species. So if you see on the top part, the blue tiger and the common four-ring, they were the most common butterfly species that were observed in the study site. But the bottom two, which are the common onyx and common tinsel, were observed only once during my entire study period. And like I spent almost 5 years on field observing these butterflies, but still I could see them only twice. So it was quite evident that some species are very common and other species are very rare. One interesting thing about butterflies is that many of these butterflies are named after the colors and patterns that they have. So the blue tiger has a tiger-like pattern, and that's why it's called as blue tiger. Whereas the common four-ring has rings on the wings, and that's why the name common four-ring. If you see carefully, it has 5 rings, but you don't consider the ring on the top wing, only the rings on the bottom wings are considered, and that's why it is called as common four-ring. So I will take you through these graphs. As I said, that some butterfly species were very common in certain habitats, and some species were common only in few habitats. And each species showed a lot of variation in habitat association. So if you take the graph on the left of the common grass yellow butterfly, on the y-axis, I have plotted the mean abundance of these butterflies, and on the x-axis are the 3 different kinds of habitats. The laterite plateau grasslands, the moist deciduous forest, and the ridge grasslands. If you observe the graphs carefully, there is not much of a difference in these different habitats for common grass yellow. Yeah, so I was just saying that these 2 different species were distributed quite differently in the 2 habitats. The common grass yellow was found in similar abundances in all habitat, but the common four-ring was found in much higher densities in the rich grassland habitat. And we speculate that this pattern is because of the nectar and the host plants of these butterflies. Host plants are the plants on which these butterflies lay their eggs. So basically, the resources which these butterflies use might be responsible for the patterns that we observe in their abundances in the different habitats. The habitats which will have more resources for a particular species, that will have higher abundances of that butterfly in that habitat. So we observed like 17 species which for which we had enough data, and we calculated how strongly these species are associated with a particular habitat. We've so what we observed is that most of the species did not show any strong association with any of the three habitats, and they were found in more or less equal numbers in all the three habitats. But some species were very strongly associated to certain kinds of habitats, and these species are specialists. So, which might be the species of interest from a conservation point of view. So in our landscape, at least, generalist species were common as compared to specialists. So to take you to the conservation implications of my study, if so these are the scatter points that you see on the graph are the abundances, they are not the abundances, they are the habitat association uh, index on the x-axis, and on the y-axis it is the strength of their relationship with the uh, habitat area and isolation. So what we found was that specialist species were found uh, in larger uh, habitat patches, and generalists were like not so much dependent on the area of the habitat. Similarly, if you look at the right graph, specialist species were found in habitat patches that were located close to each other. So for these species, the connectivity between the habitat patches is very important. But generalist species are somehow able to move across habitat patches because they feed on more resources, or they might be able to fly from one patch to another. So that's why they are not affected so much by the connectivity uh, in habitat patches in the landscape. My current work involves monitoring of long-term ecological data in Bangalore, and also studying urban ecology in the mega cities in India. This work I'm doing with Indian Institute for Human Settlements. We are using a lot of citizen science data for this study. For example, there is a portal known as eBird, where you can upload your bird observations. It can be from your balcony, it can be from the campus, it can be from like a trip that you have gone to. You just have to enter the GPS location and the number of birds that you have seen, and also like it'll give you a list of probable species that are found in that area. So using this citizen science data, which is like freely available for all, I'm mapping the distribution of birds in Bangalore. So on the left is the coppersmith barbet, which is not very commonly seen in the city. And using the data for past 10 years, if like whatever whatever data was available, after mapping, we see that it is distributed only in a few pockets in the city. But the white cheek barbet, which all of you might have heard in your neighborhoods or even on the campus, is quite well distributed across the city. And the broader goal of this project is to connect these distribution patterns with the built up area and like the green cover that is there in the city, and see what we find are certain species more adapted to urbanization, living besides humans, and which will be the species that might get lost from the city. So if there are, Bitasta, should I take questions on the research part or should I take it later?
Are you going to say, speak a little bit about your art part, Ravi?
Yes,
What
yes. The
informs
next
your...
part is art part.
Okay.
But if
So
there
maybe
are
you can
any,
finish both, then take
oh,
questions. Or you want to take
fine.
questions now?
No, no, no. It's like I can
Okay.
provide always.
Yeah. Finish it and then wait.
Yes. So like take you through my art journey. So both my research interests, my field experiences, and the art that I do, um, all are somehow connected. I didn't see that develop when I was a PhD student or even later on, but only now after 7-8 years of doing both art and science, I started seeing the connections in both the fields. Uh, and so like while doing my field work, I would get some time in the evenings, which was kind of free time that I don't have to collect data. And since I was in the remote parts in the Western Ghats, there was no electricity, there was no phone or network connectivity, so there was absolutely nothing to do. And I would feel that there is a lot of time available, but I'm not able to use it uh, to the fullest. So what should I do? So initially I would wash clothes every day and like would, but got boring really very soon. So I started uh, of course the forests and the flowers and butterflies that I would see, and the Malabar gliding frog, which is again an endemic to this. So like that was something, that was an idea that was in my head during my PhD, and after finishing my PhD, I composed this image. This image was used by the Amche Molem campaign, which is happening in Goa to stop the road widening and the electric lines and coal mining projects that are coming up. So somehow this, like I was a part of the conservation efforts that are being led by the locals over there, not directly but indirectly, so as to say. So yeah, so after my fieldwork would get over, I would try to sketch insects, flowers, fruits that I have seen during the day or on the field uh, when I'm collecting the data on butterflies. And that's how I began sketching and painting more regularly. Finally, after a few attempts, I settled for sketching leaves. So these are some of the leaf sketches that I did during my PhD and during my field work. The idea of sketching leaves came to me because I thought that leaves are easily accessible and are very abundantly available in the forest. And since I don't have any photos or internet to refer to a bird or an animal, I thought I'll sketch from life, and that's why I started getting one leaf every day and making a sketch of the plant. Uh, the forests in the Western Ghats were rich in plant diversity, and that meant that I had a new leaf to paint every day and a different pattern to observe each time I sat down to paint. And painting these leaves has given me a chance to be like closer to plants and also to observe the patterns of herbivory, the plant animal interactions that I study for my research while sketching these leaves. So I ended up sketching some 35 to 40 species of leaves during my entire um, PhD tenure. Uh, and then slowly, like I started sketching other things such as animals, plants, and posting it on Instagram. And also, I started writing about these things in popular science articles or online magazines. So initially, the idea behind painting the leaves was twofold for me. One was to highlight the diversity of plants that are there, and the other thing was to discover the the things that one might miss when we are observing trees, leaves, fruits, flowers, whatever. Was the pattern of the venation, or how the leaves are arranged on a branch, or how the inflorescence looks, because these are really important things one has to observe when it comes to scientific illustration. Uh, and I started posting these things on Instagram, Facebook, social media, writing about them in an effort to create awareness about these things. And slowly, people started noticing my work, and I started getting paid commissions uh, to paint the leaves and plants and butterflies. Uh, and then I got this one huge commission with ICLEI. Uh, it They asked me to illustrate the uh, 10 most common trees that are found in the Indian subcontinent, such as the Ashoka tree or the flame of the forest, uh, and the Eagle marmelos, which is the bale fruit. So that there is some awareness about these trees and the cultural, ecological services that they provide to the humans, because most of these plants are medicinal and many of them have very strong cultural associations with a lot of gods that are worshipped in India. So to uh, take you through the process, I use watercolors to paint uh, the illustrations. I make these small illustrations on postcard size or like A4 size um, sheets, and then I use digital software such as Photoshop, Procreate, or Illustrator to compose the final image. So like this is again like some birds and butterflies that I sketched for a coffee brand uh, in Bangalore. I also got a chance to illustrate for Connect magazine. So these are the composite images I have created using uh, the individual illustrations that I have made. So that is my process. I also do some kind of digital art, but I have not explored that platform as much as the traditional hand painting things that I do. And making these illustrations opened up a lot of avenues for me, like for Nature Conservation Foundation, which illustrates a lot of which makes a lot of material for children's books and also citizen science initiatives. I illustrated a book on birds for them. And doing now that I have done both, and I enjoy doing both equally. Uh, I'm looking at doing both these things in the future. So my current illustration for my current illustration work, I am illustrating 30 most invasive plants in India, and we are consolidating a report on the impact of these invasive species on biodiversity in India. It will be published as a review paper, and also we are making these illustrated cards which depict the impacts of these invasive weeds on native flora and fauna, and also on the humans, and some mitigation measures how to control this. So this will eventually be produced as a booklet which will have 50 invasive plant species. I have already completed making some 250 illustrations for this, and there are some another 250 to go. So that is my goal for the next few months. And yeah, so I'll take the questions now.
Thank you, Ravi. We'll take a few questions. Whoever wants to ask a question can unmute themselves and ask the question, or you can type in a question in the chat box. I can read it out for you. Maybe I'll ask the first question. So, Ravi, suppose you were not an ecologist, do you think the process of doing your art would have been different? I mean, what does an ecologist bring to the table as an artist?
So definitely, I think it would have been different because I don't have the formal exposure to a lot of techniques.
The voice is again gone, Ravi.
Hello, now is it clear? Hello. Hello.
Bitasta, we can hear Ravi.
We can hear him. Okay. All right.
Yes, to answer your question, Bitasta, it would definitely would have been different because I think I would have used many more techniques and I would have explored the digital media. But being a scientist and a keen observer of nature, and observing these birds, animal, plants around me since my childhood, I feel I can capture these details in the interactions between these animals and plants, and also their features and their behavior much more easily as a scientist as compared to an artist right now.
Thank you. Can take some more questions.
I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, hi Tanvi.
Hi Ravi. Yeah, so I was just wondering, so how do you, so suppose you're given a brief or suppose you have a commission that you've signed, how do you think the commercialization affects your creative process at all? And do you think you draw differently or you think differently if you have the slightly additional pressure of meeting someone else's expectations?
Yes, definitely. So, but some kind of style change or the number of elements that I use in an illustration might go up or down depending on the client or the requirements of the client. That definitely happens. If I'm doing something for myself, then I have a lot of freedom, but mostly when the commissions are given, the clients have a set of specific requirements that they want this, and they are okay with not they are okay with not having some elements or some complexities. So then that's a compromise that I have to make when I'm accepting these paid commissions or commissioned projects, which are maybe for a children's book or something like that. So it depends on clients, but so far I have had clients who are mostly from the ecology background, so they also knew the intricacies and the complexities that one observes in nature, and they were quite liberal, so as to say, in the final artwork that was given to them.
Okay, I see. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hi Ravi, I wanted to ask one question, not question, just I wanted to know about your experience. Am I audible to you? Sanjita here.
Sanjita. Yes,
I have always been a big fan of yours and your art, and I personally feel there is no difference between science and art because both needs creativity and imagination.
yes,
But I just
definitely.
wanted to know, how your art somehow have motivated people who are not ecologist, general crowd, the more remote people, or are you planning to contribute your art in that sector to inspire more people, more children from the remote areas or the rural areas? What do you think?
Yes.
I mean,
So,
are you planning? Yeah.
So definitely, I would like to do that. So the children's book that I illustrated for NCF was translated to Hindi, Marathi, Kannada, and like many other regional, I think 8 to 9 regional languages. And it is an open source thing, free to download. All the illustrations were also under Creative Commons. So that has been one project where we did it in like many regional languages. Also, some of the resources that I created for nature classrooms were translated into Kannada, and I designed the translated versions in Hindi.
Wonderful.
And,
yeah,
Kannada.
because I feel, at some point of time, because there are lots of art forms emerging, and many academicians are now using art as a mode of communication, and I feel that they are trying, and art is getting more complicated than science, and there are lots of, and it is loaded with lots of science, and that's where I felt that how you are going to simplify. And I'm glad to know that you've been translating it into local languages. So good job.
Yes.
And congratulations. Keep motivating many students. Yeah.
Thank you. So the invasive species thing will also be translated into Hindi, English,
Wonderful.
Marathi, Hindi, Kannada, Tamil, I think. So now more and more like organizations are also translating the resources into the regional languages where they are working. But of course, the main thing or the first release product comes in English because that is easier for me to design, and also like the content comes in English. But later on, like after the initial release, the slowly people are translating and using it, because ultimately most of these things are meant for people working on field, or like to create awareness among the areas from where these things are coming, the stories or even the material.
Yeah, so it might be out of the topic question, but was there a moment where you felt very grateful about your art, and you felt very emotional that wow, my art has done this? I think I know, I'm pretty sure that there were many moments in your life, but more than science, but art being was there some moment that you can share
So
with us?
science actually, after publishing also, I didn't feel so happy, because it has to go through the review process, and 6 months, 1 year, so many rejections, and finally it gets published. So all the energy gets drawn out by then. But with art, I felt it is not like that. The product is more like goal oriented, and once it's done, it's finished. So actually, when I got my first big commission where I illustrated the 10 trees, the ecological services Wala project, that I felt really very happy and like very satisfied.
Okay. And just one quick question. Do you think that, as an ecologist, we have more opportunity to be artists than other branch of science like physics and chemistry? If they have to draw something, what it would be, right? So do you think that is there a bias between topics and topic of science and an art? What do you think?
Maybe because I find it very easy to relate to the things that I see. Also, it's easy to illustrate these things. Maybe for illustrating for physics or like projects dealing with research in physics or chemistry, I would require some artist training where I have to think out of the box and create some abstract art or something. So yeah.
Mhm. All right, Ravi, thank you so much. Keep inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, in the last lecture, we had Sukant Saran from TIFR Mumbai, and he's a physicist by training. And he makes this
Okay.
beautiful art, sculptures,
Awesome.
yeah. So
I know.
there
I mean,
are
artist as an artist, there is no boundary for anything. But
Right.
still, I think being
Yeah.
ecologist and being in biology, I think we have more liberty to draw something. I think,
True.
and I may be false, but
No,
yeah.
no. Yeah. So we have another question, I think. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Dimpy.
Hi, Dimpy.
Hi. I have a question. Do you experience sometimes like being not so motivated to paint, or like, uh, like how do you make a balance between art and research?
No, I don't. I don't feel demotivated. I plan my days in such a way that uh, these days I will do research. I'll spend time in reading, literature review, writing, doing analysis, and these days are for art. Uh, and somehow, since I plan it in my head that tomorrow I have to come to my desk and do this, and tomorrow I have to make so many illustrations, so that motivation is always there. There might be some phases where like I'm not able to maybe paint five illustrations. I might just be able to do one, but I make sure that if I have decided that today I'm going to paint, then I paint at least a small thing or sketch at least something if it was planned for that day.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I have a question. So, do you know any organizations that are involved in open source, or even if it's not open source, data collection around ecological domains or biodiversity, and data collection and data visualization, basically? Like that
I
you
don't
have
know.
worked with or you have heard of?
So, as I said, eBird, do you know of eBird?
No, I came across only when you spoke about it. Something like that, similar to that.
So they do some kind of visualization of the data that they collect, but all the data is open source and it's available for general public. There are other forums such as iNaturalists and India Biodiversity Portal. They also do collect data on species and their records from where they were found, locations and stuff. There is Season Watch, which collects data on the flowering trees and like when the tree flowers, when the new leaves come. So they have a very like nice data collection form where anyone can collect data. So these are the 2-3 things that I know of. I have not used anything except eBird.
Okay. Could you put all of this in chat? That will be very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I have another question. I'm just wondering, what do you use to, so do you just take photos of your watercolor paintings, or do you put it through a scanner? How do you convert it to a digital format?
So it depends. If it is a very realistic looking illustration that I am creating, then I use a photo, and then I process the photo for adjusting the colors and
Mm.
like whatever, removing
Yeah.
some things that are I don't want, and also that time the photo works the best because like it preserves the depth. But if it's
Yeah.
something that is flat and is 2D, then
Mhm.
scan also works because there is no depth to that illustration, so
Mm.
a scan will work.
Okay, I see. Thanks a lot.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, sorry for the background noise. The question is more to do with, doing an illustration and then using it for education is one way of promoting the education. But how would it be to actually work with children or others to actually teach them how to do this, so that they can by their experience get into this process? What are your thoughts on that?
So I have done a few nature journalism workshops where like kids from different age groups were like taken on a nature walk so that they appreciate the biodiversity and plants and everything that is there in their surroundings, and just to create the habit of seeing things, because like I have done it for very young kids, maybe like fourth to sixth standard. So just to observe things and pay attention to detail, we did a very basic workshop where they were encouraged to sketch anything that they see, observe the details under a microscope or a magnifying glass, fill in colors, and write a small story or a poem about it. So that is one way to go about it. Other thing is to like encourage them to go on nature walks or like do observations on the garden plants that are there to cultivate that interest.
Yeah, true. I feel the hands-on part is always more interesting because it gives them also the skills of observing and
Yes.
apart from enjoying. Of course, your work is really wonderful. I've really liked it also, but
Thank you.
the way yeah, the way of looking at it as a painting or as an illustration put across by someone else, and then by actually doing it by yourself, there's a lot more learning to it, is what I feel. So
Yes.
very nice that you've also been doing teaching children how to do illustrations through the nature walks.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Is there any more question?
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, Ravi. This is Samira.
Hi. Hi,
Hi, I
Samira.
just wanted to ask if you faced any issues regarding copyrights or, plagiarism kind of issues, especially when you were starting out. How do you make sure that your work is not plagiarized?
So I like the thing was I never released any of the work in the sense that it was commissioned, so it was mostly always given to the people who have commissioned it, and they released it on their social media platforms or as a part of a book or whatever the final material content was to be, and only then I posted on my social media, and also I did not face an issue of plagiarism for the things that I used, like that I had created personally, and I had posted it on my social media. I never came across somebody using it on their site or anything. And anyways, nowadays, if you post it on social media, like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all of them compress the images, so it is of a very low quality. It's very difficult to use it for commercial use by anyone, is what is my understanding.
Right. Thanks, Ravi.
Thank you.
Anybody who wants to ask the last question?
Hi, I'd like to ask one last question. Yeah, I was wondering, so do you have access to Illustrator and Photoshop through your institute, so through IISc, or have you purchased it by yourself?
I had gotten it as a student when I was like a PhD candidate here, and I have been using the same version since then. Like I'm using the same thing that I had purchased a few years back.
I see. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, Ravi, I'll ask the last question then.
Okay.
It might be repetitive, but your last conclusion probably. So I wanted to know, for everyone's benefit, what does the artist borrow from the scientist, and what does the scientist borrow from the artist?
It will be difficult to separate the two things, but I think me personally, I like as a observer, like as a scientist and a observer, I take a lot of these behavioral observations and the minute details in plants or animals, be it their eyes, shape of the beak, the color of the feathers, when I'm doing the art, and to connect it to the science part, the scientific thinking helps to compose these images and like somehow creating the logic behind the ideas. But it's a very personal thing. It might be very different for different people.
Okay. So if there is no more question, we'll call it a day. Thank you so much, Ravi. Thank you for sharing your work and for talking to us so candidly. I'm sure many in the audience have been inspired by your work, and keep doing the good work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.